Fabulas Quentos in VERSO, FÁBULAS, and verses stories by María Goyri warning for a long time. The School Institute has encountered significant obstacles that prevent its students from having extensive and varied literary readings. All teachers who instruct Spanish language and literature in their initial degrees will face, to a greater or lesser extent, the same difficulties. It is true that there are many collections of selected pieces, and these serve an important pedagogical purpose by providing detailed examination of various grammatical or artistic issues, but they do not satisfy. The students need to know and appreciate the whole body of work to which these pieces belong. The means for this knowledge are lacking. A student could perhaps remedy this by visiting a library. However, in many places there is no library, or it is not adequately equipped. In other cases, the nature or extent of many works that can be found in libraries exceeds the comprehension or capacity of students in their early years of study. In any case, if the reader has access to the works they need to know on their own desk, they will always gain greater familiarity with them. It is therefore very convenient to provide a collection of literary works easily accessible to students, consisting of the main works that they must be acquainted with. That is why we have been working for some time in compiling this library, which is now being published, and for which most of the texts are already prepared, aiming to maintain continuity and speed in publication. We will not entirely exclude from it some fragmentary extracts, such as those found in anthologies, but they will be extensive and few. In general, literary productions taken as a whole are included. It goes without saying that many of the works included here must be abridged to make their reading easy and straightforward for any young person who is not going to specialize in literature. The task, as can easily be understood, is extremely delicate, especially when dealing with works of considerable length, like Amadis, where what is removed is much more than what is kept. But when eliminating parts from any composition, every care has been taken to preserve both the fundamental thought of the author, and here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Paidal. The main passages where this thought manifests itself, we have also forbidden ourselves from irresponsibly altering texts and avoid truncating them with numerous small deletions that distort the author's style of things we found intolerable in certain reduction essays, for example, of Don Quixote. With the aim of serving a comprehensive literary initiation, this collection includes pieces of various characters, alongside masterpieces, other works of differing artistic or historical value, some of which are too forgotten. We hope young readers can easily revive much of the adventurous interest contained within the historians of India, reaching as far as a musical chanter composed primarily of traditional songs. We also include American authors. Given the breadth of the purpose, the limited space we have imposed on ourselves, and the contradictory reasons that may advocate for including or excluding a work, it is understood that selection must be open to debate and subject to inevitable omissions, particularly noticeable in the works of more recent authors, as the lack here is always less apparent, with modern books being more accessible to all. Some will also notice an excess in the collection, especially considering that for the beginnings of study, several of the works included here may exceed the understanding and taste of a young student in his initial years. However, it should never be overlooked that a child's learning, and that of a man as well, is always achieved through perceiving only partially those things that exceed immediate comprehension, and await future assimilation for a more perfect understanding, either with appropriate repetition or without. This is how children learn language, barely noticing they stumble upon incomprehensible words. These words eventually illuminate themselves in full comprehensibility. It is evident that not all works published here are suited for the earliest age, as there should be abhorrence towards overly incomprehensible language teaching. One must avoid reading material where difficulties become too noticeable. To circumvent this obstacle, this library has strived to accomplish two things. So that firstly, it seeks to comprehend those masterpieces whose most knowledge is most urgent in our literary history. Secondly, it aims to include certain works that by their simplicity and elemental character better suit the early years of life and study than other works of greater significance and artistic reach. Yet even these works have been chosen from among those that possess a positive historical value. For example, consider how the traditional field of fables can be broadened to include names of very high authors. By combining these two types of material, this library attempts to include in 30 small volumes the works whose knowledge we find most essential or timely during the initial years of teaching, organizing them under the double method of genres and epochs so that the entirety can easily be understood. Historically, the 30 volumes are organized according to a literary canon and a previously established catalogue of the best works that a student should immerse themselves in the beginning of their studies to gain the foundations of their traditional Spanish culture. This library aims to help alleviate the common case of those who have been educated in the most closed ignorance of our past artistic life, living and even writing hither venerating mere shadows of famous names that delight their ears like a thunderous band, disparaging them to ease the discomfort not knowing them or the bitterness of discovering figures too late that they should have encountered earlier and with greater preparation to understand. However, it is crucial to emphasize that this wide historical perspective, which we consider the precise foundation of literary education, should never aspire to imitate the author studied. This would be a childish and harmful endeavor. The abundance and great diversity of texts gathered here clearly indicate that this library does not propose to offer models for imitation that would stifle the native freshness of those studying them, but rather aims for something higher and more effective. It seeks to imbue the reader with principal literary products, enriching their thought and language as they develop a strong root in tradition, using the past as a starting point from which to continue the line of progress tradition indicates toward the future. Innocent spontaneity, scornful of all tradition, would turn daily literary production into a fleeting flower without seed. The ideas and language of each generation would be like a sealed room, completely disconnected from generations of yesterday and inaccessible those of tomorrow, also dismissive of the past. It's not enough to claim that perfect ignorance of tradition is practically impossible. A carefree ingenuity left to the closest traditional impressions, or like a mob in disarray stumbling through cracks, will usually produce only abortive attempts at development. It will always be most vulnerable to becoming an unwitting victim of any momentary success, masquerading as novel. Only when impressions multiply and become dense is spontaneity more secure in being able to mature its fruits within itself better and more consciously. Menendez Pidal. April 1922. Illustration Raphael Pombogot, Columbia, 1834 of 1912. The hen and the jay teach me a song, said the talkative hen to the skilled and nimble jay saluting the dawn. To you, replied the jay. Well, don't mock me. To birds of your kind, who has it been possible to teach? And why? Because one must learn by listening, and a chatterbox never wanted to let anyone else speak but himself. The sun and the dust, a furious whirlwind eclipsed the dust from the sun, and shouted at him in mockery, Divine star, where are you? What have you done to yourself? And the sun continued on his silent course. The hurricane ceased. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Pedal. The dust of the plain settled into the grey, and in the serene blue sky of glory and pomp, the sun followed silently. Then the counselling crab, always stand tall, my dear daughter, her mother crab told little crab, to be good. Obey your mother when she commands. Mother, she answered, I will follow you. I do not want to contradict you in any way. Go ahead, set an example for me, and I will instantly follow suit. Illustration, Manual, Del Palacio, L.A. Reader, 1831, 1906. The marble pieces at the foot of a marble quarry in Carrara. Several giant blocks, remnants of a great ruin, resembled, while another, moved by ropes and levers, was pulling many workers in joyous commotion. 10 powerful oxen, yoked to the pole, were bearing the immense mass across the mountain, and as they heard it creak upon receiving it, voices murmured in the empty space, filled with threats. Why are you abandoning us? The stones whispered, What do you seek in your pride beyond these lonely regions? The man has chosen me, the uprooted one, to be admired by the world, a perpetual sentinel of his fame. If I have been a rock until now, tomorrow I will be a statue. I am not to blame for being the most beautiful and the whitest. Have pity before anger. If you must capture it with the force of your profanation, do not boast about it. But in vain do you pride yourself. Vanity deceives you. Even if you change form, you will remain a stone, like my sisters. Before you rise from the common folk into the eyes of all, know that the chisels and hammers await you. Men on earth are marbles with souls, and if these, when carved, leave dust behind, those leave tears. Naturalism, after a day's work and hungry, though cheerful, 2 Rhondda students arrived at an inn. It was beginning to get dark, and both of them, without hesitation, approached the hearth, determined to eat. A young girl, light as a red squirrel, warned them with a good jar of wine, sausage, bread, and tortilla, which they devoured without needing to repeat it. Then, going to sleep in peace and grace of God. The next morning, just as day was breaking, they drank aguardiente with the innkeeper, and then prepared to pay for their horses. Happy as when they arrived, they set off on their way. This is not a deep tale, nor do I ask any favors, but don't you find it perfectly natural? Illustration, Rame, De Campoema Navi Asturias, 1901. Parents and children, a shepherd could not drag a miserable goat that heard her son happily bleating behind. The son, inconstant, did not want to walk alongside his mother. Fool! A wise man told the shepherd, put the little one behind you, carry your son on your shoulder, and instantly you will see the mother following behind the young goat. The shepherd thought this advice was simple. He picked up the young goat and ran off, carrying it on his pack horse. The goat followed them without hesitation, but so close to her little goat that her hooves kept pace with his. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Peidel. Behind him, she was licking. Parents and children, a swarm of birds locked in a metal cage guarded a lamb, and from the hill its distressed parents' pair flew to care for them. "See," said the shepherd, "when their children come together united, carefully tending to their parents, I want to see the children out of love and gratitude." He wrapped the pair in nets, opened the gate, and locked the parents and children inside. The swarm fled from the young ones, and as their return was hopelessly delayed, sorrow and hunger killed the parents. The bounce back through a town, a Maragadoto carried on a mule a cat, which a boy, feigning disinterest, grabbed by the tail behind the mule. Injured, the cat appeared to be sensitive, so it gave the male a terrible scratch. Then, hurt, the sensitive male kicked and knocked down the boy. In my opinion, the world is a chain. As the ball rolls, the bad actions we do on others' heads reflect back onto us in a bounce. Illustration, the concert of animals, assuming that any throat that breathes can be heard, good or bad. This is not a lie, for whether good or bad, whoever breathes sings. Speak then to 1,000 skilled animals who gave a concert like many others. It said the sense doesn't accompany vocal organs, so in the land of these animals, each one pretending to be extremely skilled, shouted, "Down with the lion, out with the master." The monarchy fell, and in a republic they turned the kingdom over. "Let's have a symphony of our triumphs in honor," they said. "Each one sing as he pleases, no more conductor. Let the tyrant die." The concert began. Grok, or the rooster, cried, and at the first mistake a horse neighs in response. Hey-oh, hey-oh, the foal followed. Peep, peep, pee. The colorin chimed in. Cuff, the pig grunted. The mountain cat sang mew, mew, rah, rah, like a brave tiger, and the lazy turkey accompanied him with a certain paper. Together they created such a terrible cacophony that even Lucifer would have struggled to endure it. The deposed lion, seeing such great turmoil in the kingdom, said angrily, holding up one in Flanders, "Silence. The king will conduct. Back off, scoundrels." Seeing this, each one went quiet and still. "Let the orchestra play again," the tyrant continued, imitating Nero, "and woe betide whoever complains by grunting and gets eaten by me." What could be replied? There's no reply. "Stick or songlet, siege one." And as the orchestra began to play, peep, peep, caw, caw, raw, caw, mew, mew, nearby, followed, hey, ho, 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 fuff, uff, pa, pa, pa. And such was the music that everyone praised. The world exclaimed in awe, "Bravo! Bravo!" The concert, once crazy, became a marvel, living god of art, and though grunting a little, each animal played its part, learning to their own detriment that, without a good conductor, there is no good orchestra. Illustration, the concert of the animals. The 2 sparrows, "Bring me some food," one sparrow said to another. Here is the translated text with the name, preserved as requested. Another chirping sparrow. "Open the door to my cage first," replied the sparrow to its interrogator. "And if you see me free and then leave without feeding me, what then?" "Who tells me?" And answered the prisoner, "that you'll open it if I fill your pocket." In conclusion, whether the feeder comes first or the wire mesh, the caged bird remained a prisoner, while the hungry one returned hungrier. By God, such a friend deserves a friend like him. And now you might say, as I do, well, they're just like humans in certain situations. Illustration, the rooster, and the hare a rooster told a hare. "Run away," the coward retorted the hare. But seeing a bloodhound approaching too late, she fled. "Wait," said the rooster, "God protect you." "Isn't that running away, madam?" asked the rooster. And before the hound could get close, the hare answered, "I'm not running, I'm racing." Illustration, Antonio de Trueba Bilbao, 1821-1889. The example, a storyteller, whose name I cannot recall due to how easily a person's sanctity can be overshadowed by fame, tells of a day in a town he describes. According to the complete details we have, a family sat at their table, as they usually did, an elderly, trembling, and bald man, a couple, apparently the son and daughter-in-law of the old man, and a mischievous child. Each one with great care tended to their stomachs. However, the poor grandfather's spoon slipped through his fingers, and since it was metal, it shattered into 200 pieces a plate of stone, to put it bluntly, from the wealthy ones. The husband and wife screamed with 1,000 insults. That kind of breaking doesn't earn us plates. The argument continued. They tell that the next day the old man ate from a wooden plate, but due to his trembling he made such a mess that bread and tablecloth became a ruin. "This is going too far," screamed the husband and wife. "Get up and go eat in the kitchen. If it doesn't suit you there, go eat in the stable, for we're all full of your filth." Upon hearing this advice, or rather command, the old man bowed his head and left with his plate. From that day on, he ate his ration sadly in the kitchen to avoid trouble. The elderly one, weeping over the ingratitude of his children one day, had his sad eyes filled. The poor man and his grandson, the poor man, gazing at his grandson, saw the eager boy conceal a thick log. He asked, "What is that for?" The grandson replied, "From this log I will create a fine dish for when my parents eat when I get married." The miserable old man exclaimed, "It will meet the same fate as me." The 3 friends, according to Herder, a man with 3 friends, loved 2 of them dearly and was always cold toward the 3rd. One day he was accused of a horrible murder, and his soul felt as fragile as a thread, though he was innocent of such a heinous crime. "My friends," he said, "they accuse me of murder. The judge, they tell me, is like a basilisk. I am innocent, and I beg you all 3 to come with me as witnesses to prove my innocence." The first friend gave some urgent business as an excuse. The second accompanied him reluctantly, but when he saw the crowd of guards and officials at the tribunal, he turned tail faster than Cardona, afraid they might suspect him. The accused had low expectations from his third friend, but that loyal and spirited companion appeared before the law officer and defended him so vividly that he was declared innocent on the spot. A man has 3 friends in this world. Money is the first and forsakes him most readily. Kin and relations are the second, who even visit his grave but fear death and turned back, saying at best, "We'll wait for you there centuries from now." Finally, good deeds are his third friend. Though they may have seemed indifferent toward him, they defend him before the divine tribunal so effectively that in the end grace covers all his sins. The lions share the lion, bear, wolf, and fox went hunting without dogs or horns. After they caught a substantial amount of goats, sheep, young bucks, and mares, they said, "Let's divide this now and immediately fill our bellies." "Who will do it?" asked the lion sardonically, perhaps looking for an opportunity to cause trouble. "Amen," replied the bear, whose foolish penchant is to do the same thing. "Then let's get started," said the lion, when they divided their catch into 4 parts. The lion told the bear to choose one. "You don't know how to divide," growled the lion in a gruff voice at the bear, who dared not reply. And with a snap of his jaws, he shattered the bear's skull. He then turned to the fox and said sweetly, "Little one, You will make the division now, since you are unlikely to be malicious about it. Here is the translation, preserving the name Pidal in 5 piles. The distributor divides the hunt, and upon completing her task, she says to the lion with a graceful bow, Your Majesty, choose from these 5 parts the 3 that are yours as a lion, 1 as a monarch, another, and another as a leader. Hello, 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 replies the lion. I see you're not foolish. And adding a contented wag of his tail, he inquires, Tell me, who taught you all these things? Who, sir? Answers the fox. Illustration, illustration, the wolf, and the lamb a wolf, and a lamb arrived at a stream. The wolf was starving, more so from hunger than thirst, and this is how a dialogue ensued between them that still resonates to me as if it happened yesterday. Subject, you will die, said the wolf to the lamb, for the water that I, your king, drank, you dared to disturb. How, sir, asked the lamb, have I offended you when I was below your majesty? If you haven't done it now, you did it 6 months ago. Sir, if I'm still not 2 years old. Well, if you didn't do it, your father would have, said the wolf, and it's only fair that you suffer for it now. Thus speaking, the wolf, devoid of conscience and compassion, made the lamb a victim of his greed, a trait common among tyrants who, lacking valid reasons to oppress the righteous, invent false ones. Illustration, illustration, Concepcion, Arenal Ferrell, 1820-1893. The sobriest and the glutton in a remote place, 2 old men lived, one of great sobriety and the other a great glutton. The first always enjoyed the best health from January to January, while the second was weak and portly. Why, asked the glutton one day, do I eat much more than you, yet find myself fatter? I cannot comprehend it truly. It is, replied the frugal man, a matter of great significance because I digest well. You do not. You make this an application for the pompous pedant who thinks he's learned because he's read a lot. And always remember, it's not what you eat that nourishes you, but what your body digests. The murmuring wolf amid the brush of a hill. On a snowy day, a wolf was speaking to his companion about a dog. He's a damned neighbor, so loyal and cruel that to be free from him requires skill. Barker with people, intrusive, greedy, suspicious and cautious and short, an indecent dog. At that moment a foxer happened to pause, and after hearing the accusation, said to his companion, Go tell him this dog accused by a wolf must be a complete dog. Whether in good times or bad, you'll never forget that praise comes from the most insincere of critics. Illustration, John Eugenio Hartzenbusch, Madrid, 1806-1880. The spike rich in fruit bends to the ground. The one without grain stands stiff. It is in his humble bearing that the wise man is distinguished from the boorish fool. The 3 complainers. How awful, cried the monkey, that I'm without a tail. How badly off I am. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Pidal. Sin eyes, woe is me. The donkey responded, and said, The mole, I have more reason to complain, for I am sightless. Don't deny your fortune, Camilo. Others may suffer more from theirs. If it can be mended, no one in the world has a fuller measure of happiness. Illustration, the camel, and the dromedary. The camel said to the dromedary, Compared to you, how much more valuable I am. There is no doubt I have 2 humps, while you have only 1. The buyer and the seller, a tale, crafted for pleasure, seems to depict the argument that took place in a vinegar and oil shop in Madrid. A young man from Madrid was pouring liquids on the street in the Cal de Torrija. Another local fellow went there with his jar for oil. You old face, said the stranger without apprehension. Serve me quick, fill my jug well. When you learn to speak Spanish, retorted the shopkeeper, you'll realize that what you hold in your hand is called a satire oil container. In every land that grows chickpeas, replied the provincial, heated up. Alcuza has always been, and we call it soba, in a chickpea. Growing land, said the other. Conley and etc. circulates, and whoever gives it a different name was born among mulberries and mustard plants. The boor held his ground. The clever shopkeeper dismissed him. They quarrelled, and as a result there was a godly argument. The shouting and nicknames followed, long and furious, all over something that can be called both ways. A childish extravagance, but very common in humans, is to dispute the substance and argue over the name. Illustration: the murmuring donkey. Lord, said the fox to the lion, it's inevitable that blood should flow. The stupid donkey keeps murmuring furiously from you. Bah, replied the generous beast, let him bray as much as he wants. A stingy chest is needed to feel insults from a foal. The miser and the newspaper seller, a certain miser, kept all his wealth in ounces of gold, stored in a clay pot. To ensure safety, he took his pot to the country at the foot of a tree. He dug and buried it carefully. The next morning, a hungry and desperate farmer found himself without bread or hope of earning some. He shook his money belt and found a quarter. He bought a rope and immediately set off to the field to let the Sparta type of plant lift his sorrows. He attempted to hang himself, choosing the tree that was once the treasure in ounces, motionless Gargarian. As he secured one end of the rope well to a branch, his foot sank into the hole, and he found the buried pot. He picked it up, kissed it, and left, running as fast as he could. Soon after, the precious yellow jar visited its owner. The ground was disturbed, and the hole empty, but neither the pot nor the gold coins were seen or traced. Noticing the rope, he tied a loop at the end, and hanged himself to avoid living without his beloved treasure. Thus the pot and the rope, good or bad, found their use, one in a hungry man, the other in a suicide. And in the neck of a miser, the indirectness of Father Kobos, famous among sharp-tongued and foolish people. The indirectness is that of Father Kobos, but surely there will be those who appreciate that I relate to you what these indirect remarks were in their kind by transcribing the report they gave me. It seems that in a certain Andalusian town there was an exemplary convent with a prelate, a perfect and complete servant of God, who was a wonder in science and patience. For this reason, one after another, they all went to visit him in his convent, without any reason or purpose so importunate that the poor man was always being accosted to fulfill the rules of his state. The porter of the house was a cleric, a Catalan or Galician named Kobos, Bartolome by name, tall and robust, with a resolute and somewhat stern face. The superior called him and said, "See if you can make, in an indirect way, that this people understand that I am annoyed by so many visits." "I will make that family leave promptly," replied the impetuous one. "Wes, take care, but indirectly, of course," said the father. Trust in Bartolo's skill. When it comes to indirectness, I'm a master. The next day, early in the morning, a persistent visitor arrived. He rang the bell. Ting-tang. "Ave Maria," said Bartolome without opening the gate. "Brother, try to go to another source, so as not to deplete this one from today on. Yeah. No estiel pigo de sticky sweet, my prior's chocolate." Hearing the strange indirect remark, the man left, his face turning red. Shortly after, a foolish visitor arrived. Kobos said, "Excuse the interruption while I hold the position of porter, Neither a Gandal idle person nor a Majidero nuisance will enter here. After dismissing the second visitor, he welcomed the third. Take the portable, barked the fierce Kobos. I won't have spies among monks. With such additions, and in a tone that was far from gentle, Bartolome sent each visitor packing, and from then on, not even a mosquito disturbed the blessed prior in his cell. Satisfied, but confused, the father asked the monk, "How did you manage to resolve things with that family, so that I no longer had to see them?" "It was very simple, my dear prior," Kobos replied. "Each one expressed their indirectness and left me alone. Tell me the subtle expressions whose virtue led reason astray." I told them the truth. "You are a bunch of loudmouths, chatters and gluttons. Do you call that indirectness? I never was more circumspect in my remarks." "Well, brother, whether they are lies or truths, their indirectness is atrocious." The prior spoke wisely, but since there are people so outrageously impertinent, it's also good to answer them to such an indirect remark as the Kobos style. The Pantrier storyteller from the Council of Ultramar spent a night in a rural house belonging to a farmer. Accompanying him was a certain Aerbi de Ruiz, a young man with an expert nose, but a notable fool. They dined peacefully and intended to rise early. They had to sleep in a small room. In one side of the room, across from each other, there were 4 closed windows. 2 of them were balconies, the other 2 corresponded. Titled The Bronze Horse to a cupboard where there were 6 cheeses from Villain. The narrator fell asleep late and poorly, and while sleeping he felt thunderous roar of a colossal flood. Near dawn, he told Fulano Aerbi, "Get up and see if it smells like wet earth." Aerbi sprang from his bed and, groping his way to the balcony, went straight to the cupboard. He opened it, hitting his head, and, although he looked and peered closely, he found a dark hole just as in the rest of the room. But soon he sensed a peculiar smell within the enclosure, different from that of damp earth. Then, with much formality, the narrator said, "There's no humidity in the air. It's dark and smells like cheese." Thus, those who make hasty and misguided judgments bring fame to others without considering the proper perspective. Santillana criticizes and rejects this concept for avoiding the window and peering into the cupboard. The bronze horse children between 7 and 11 years old play joyfully around the fountain of the great bronze horse in Plaza de Orient during late morning and evening. Suspend your races as it's hot outside and listen to a very true, indeed heartbreaking tale told in Madrid. That horse. I use this somewhat silly expression because I believe in my conscience that saying horse is ugly regardless of who rides it. King Philippiv is the one, however, common usage which has the force of law leads us to forget the king and refer to the irrational creature. Instead, I don't know the reason. I asked many people, but none could provide a clear explanation. In any case, I will say horse, but it should be understood as a group. That horse, years ago, was located within Retiro Park, opposite the house of the Dyke Five. There, the garden provides freshness through its waters and greenery, and the melodious nightingale has a secure home free from predators. There, birds would fly up to the horse with an easy and swift motion to drink from the pond's waves that surrounded him. The crowd would rush towards him without much restraint, and he had a gap in his mouth due to his peculiar shape. Any small bird, like a sparrow, could enter from outside. But inside things were reversed. Even if the intruder's head and neck passed through, they couldn't find a firm hold on his wings or feet, which only caused hindrance. With utmost force, he would peck the horse's throat and chest with his sharp, curved edge. And as the animal became a victim of its fatal imprudence, unable to escape, it struggled in its metal prison while starving and thirsting to death. Thousands of tiny birds sought dense shade during summer, and thousands more during winter when cold rain or snow would pierce them. They would enter through his belly. From the horse in vengeance muttered to itself, "Abandon all hope, birds that enter me." With time, it moved from the garden where it dwelt to the square where it now stands, and then its body above it was disarmed. The concave secrets of the cruel quadruped revealed themselves, filled with feathers and bones of birds swallowed whole by it. A hand of mercy prudently closed the narrow Wellarian, which had sucked so much life from the simple little bird. Their harmful curiosity led them to a brutal death. Oh, how many in our age, through the chasm of doubt, plunge into impiety? An abyss we're asking for help from mortal discourse to escape. It leaves us without resource, desperate and dead. The slice of bread Basilio, seated at his little table for dinner in his room, was visited unexpectedly. It was a beautiful lady who intruded into his home, saying, "I am Basilio, a wise enchantress. I know you are not lazy, and your fortune is meagre. For your sake, give me a slice of bread." She asked for just an ounce, and another tomorrow. The honest worker readily lent them. "Nothing remains with me, truly," he said. "I have a daughter, a son, and a wife, but it does not matter." "Take it." Basilio, with a good heart and faith, broke off the slice. The enchantress received it and left. Basilio waited anxiously for her the next day. She returned 365 times. And in the humble home, great joy and contentment reigned at the moment of offering the slice. A year later, the magical beggar returned with a face even happier than any seen that year. From an elegant box, she began to take out twists and put them into her alms parent's daughter and son. "Here is the bread I received from you," she said, "and it has increased slightly. The aid is not magnificent, but it is a favor. Learn this lesson from the sorceress of Thrift. As you wish, it will bring you benefit, great or small. The recipe for being rich is in your hands. Do you want a happy situation for old age? Be ants in summer, as Solomon teaches. At its own time, everything has its purpose. A fox was fleeing over a hill from a mastiff who had nearly caught her tail. Above, and lark flying saw the fox and sang fearlessly in the air. "Hear my voice," she said to the fleeing one. "Let's make music," replied the fox. "Some people like to amuse everyone, but if they are not timely, they cause discomfort." The paper and the rag to a poor rag lying on the ground. Paper scornfully said, "Go away, filthy thing! Don't come near me, for I am clean, bright, and smooth, and I do not want to suffer your contact, nor be pushed by you through all the universe." "Look at the foolish one," answered the rag, "and how determined I am to avoid it. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Pidal. If he thus insults and scorns me, tell me, handsome one, how can you so quickly forget in your arrogance that it was a harap who gave you life, and that before paper there was cloth? He who descends from the plebe understands not to scorn them, even if they rise above him, lest someone say, 'Do you see the contempt with which he looks at us?' That fool, before becoming what he is, was once a plebeian. The wasted time from a well in a garden, a young man would spend hours playing, entirely mortal in his effort to ascend and descend with 2 buckets. His goal was to fill them from the deep well and carry them back up, not to the garden, but directly into the well itself. An old man saw him and with his raspy voice said, "Do you know, young man, that I don't understand this intense obsession of yours in straining the rope and pulley. If only he had seen me at least tossing the water away when I saw you exerting yourself. So I would have seen some purpose in your labor, but why do you so eagerly await such a strong desire to pull water up only to let it fall back down again? I am entertained." The young man replied, "By this rough effort that bothers you. But if you insist on reproaching me, will you tell me what I am wasting?" The old man retorted, "You foolish youth, you waste time. Is that not enough?" The mole and the light worm through a narrow crevice. A mole emerged with little flesh on its bones, but plenty of skin over its eyes. It didn't know if it was night or day. However, it felt a glow from a light worm around the perimeter and said to it, You can be proud, as big as a grain of rice, carrying this lantern as a decoration. You show it, then hide it, just as arrogant and proud as a beacon that guides the pilot in the tower." "Not quite," the worm replied, "as I am aware of my smallness. But I do no harm to anyone, and I bring benefit to others. I provide light hidden in the grass, alighting on plants, and insects come to take shelter in its trunk. I neither destroy roots nor eat seeds, nor do I hide underground for fear of humans." The worm spoke these words with such a tone that the malicious little creature became even more blinded by anger. He tried to reply, but couldn't. He felt his face flush and, grumbling between his teeth, retreated into a hole. This is how it goes in the world. The most clumsy and foolish ones insult or jeer at anyone who shines, be it a little or a lot. The young shepherd and the nest. Where are you going, cruel shepherd? Where are you taking that nest, laughing while those poor birds cry? Their mother left them alone at this very moment to seek sustenance for them and bring it with her beak. How startled she looks as she leaves her young behind, leaping from tree to tree, returning, flying without rest. But all to the sky, he pleads with a pained accent, while they beat their wings in his hand upon hearing it. You also had a mother, and you lost her when you were very young, and you found yourself on the earth without shelter or warmth. Tears well up in the tender shepherd's eyes, and ashamed and confused, he leaves his nest in the tree. Illustration, Andres Bellocaracas, Aracazuela, 1781-1865. The squirrel, the dog, and the fox Madame Squirrel, with a fierce dog, an old comrade and companion, ventured into the field one afternoon to relax. Engaged in delightful conversation, they strolled on until they found themselves far from their usual haunt. Enshrouded and stormy, night surprised them at a great distance from their shared home. No other shelter presented itself but an ancient, sturdy oak. The hollow trunk offered lodging and a bed for our doggo. The light squirrel leapt up to a branch in 3 bounds and crouched as best she could. They bade each other good night and soon fell asleep. I surmise it was midnight, a propitious time for thievery and pillage, when a notorious outlaw, one of the most feared foxes in the area, 20 or 30 leagues around, came upon this path. With his hungry maw full of pulsating meat, he circled the tree. He spied, sniffed, and saw the squirrel high up. Already her imagination savoured her, and a tongue licked her lips. Her tail wagged, but how could she possibly climb so high if she didn't have wings? He was about to say, "Not ripe yet," when a brilliant idea struck him. "Dear madam," he said, Please forgive me for interrupting your peaceful rest. After much exertion, and finally finding solace in her presence, the sky granted me this delightful joy that took hold of my soul. Don't you recognize me? Your good mother, my late father's sister, was mine. I am honored to be your cousin. Oh, in his final hours, the venerable old man entrusted me with a task to find his niece and give her half of the meager inheritance he left behind after his passing. Welcome to my paternal home 1,000 times over, and let me serve you on this journey as a squire and page. What are you hesitating about? What's holding you back from sealing my happiness right now by joining your love to mine in an intimate embrace? She, who appeared cunning, vivacious, and quick-witted, immediately grasped the insincere fox's ruse. Thus she responded, "Such kindness, my dear cousin, and the generous legacy of the pious deceased, at peace, as I must, I appreciate. I would like to descend at once, but my sex. For this meeting it is necessary that a dear kinsman, who was my protection in my tender years, be present, if you are willing, someone discreet, whom you can treat without formality. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Pidal, the encounter, and the unexpected. You will soon get to know them. He lives in that downstairs room, call him. Don Marajo, celebrating his good fortune, believed he would catch 2 birds with 1 stone with the greatest ease and comfort. And indeed he called out, but fate took a turn for the worse. The dog, suddenly enraged, leaped forward, seized him, and took his life. This simple tale warns us, my dear daughter, of 3 important things seductors use: cunning arts. Evil has its sad end, and in life struggles the right choice of a companion is worth more than gold. The camel and the fleer to him who seems powerful, yet his strength has no impact for good or ill. I wish to tell a tale. On a long journey, a heavily laden camel, exhausted, exclaimed, "Oh, what a heavy burden!" The fleer, riding on top of him, immediately dismounted and said arrogantly, "I'll lighten your load." The camel replied, "Thank you, Mr. Elephant. The sack carrying vice in a sack slung over my shoulder. I display the faults of others in front, but mine are hidden behind." This is what everyone does. They show others' faults, but hide their own. The crow and the fox perched on a tree branch, proud and content, with a cheese in his beak, was Mr. Crow. Attracted by the scent, a very cunning fox spoke to him these words, "Have a good day. Miss Crow, my master, you are so gracious, charming, and beautiful. I don't pay compliments. I only speak what I feel. If your lovely song matches your beauty, I swear to the goddess seers, with heaven as a witness, that you will be the phoenix of her vast empires." Hearing such sweet words, filled with vanity, the crow wanted to sing. He opened his black beak, dropped the cheese, and the clever fox, after catching him, said, "Mr. Fool, since you are full of compliments so full that any other food digests the flattery while I digest the cheese." Those who listen to flatterers should never expect anything else. The dog and the crocodile, a dog, was drinking by the Nile at the same time he was running. "Drink calmly," said a cunning crocodile. The wise dog replied, "It is harmful to drink and run, but is it healthy to wait for me to sink my teeth in?" Oh, what an old, wise dog! I admire his judgment in not following the enemy's advice. The two frogs had neighboring pastures, one in a pond, the other on a path. One day she said to him, "Is it credible, dear friend, of your great wisdom, that you live content among dangers, where your very steps and wheels are threatened? Leave such a home, change your destiny, follow my advice, and come with me. In a mocking tone, making countless gestures, he responded, "What excellent advice. New things for me. Oh, what madness!" That would certainly give the devil an opportunity. Here is the translation of the text. Preserving the name Pidal, I am leaving the house that was the home of my parents, grandparents, and all of mine, without a single misfortune having befallen it for countless generations. Go ahead and make your way, but understand that perhaps what has not been seen will occur. A carriage arrived at this very moment, and sadly it ruined the fried egg. There are many men with good sense who close their ears to new reasoning. Taking advice is madness. Usually old habits are their book. Illustration, the fox and the statue. The fox said to the statue, after sniffing it, "Your head is beautiful, but devoid of sense." Like this one, there are many that, although they appear human, are merely statues. The weasel, the woman, and the cock, a cock with drooping ears and tail between his legs, was being led away by a weasel from the village. Thank goodness for dawn, which allowed Joanna, the early riser, to witness the spectacle as she left her home. She shouts like a madwoman, "Neighbors, where are they taking him?" "It's mine, neighbors." The cock hears the complaints and tells the weasel, "Tell them that you're not lying. He belongs to me and to no one else." Turning his head, the weasel responds, "Listen, great deceiver. It doesn't belong to you, it's mine." As he spoke, the cock flies free and sings from the top of a tree that he's got nothing to hide. The embarrassed weasel flees. Who would have thought? I, too, saw 4 cunning foxes in their tricks, but, for speaking out of turn, they lost their catch. Illustration, the vanquished lion, by a man, a skilled artist, painted a scene where a brave man alone defeated a horrible lion. Another lion, who saw the painting without asking about its creator, said in a dismissive tone, "It's clear that this is painting as one wishes. It wasn't the lion who was the painter." Illustration, the milkmaid carried a pitcher on her head to the market with such agility, simplicity, and pleasure that she told anyone who noticed, "I am indeed content with my fortune." Since she didn't desire any company besides her thoughts, they happily offered her innocent ideas of contentment. She walked alone, the happy milkmaid, and said to herself, "After selling this milk, I will have enough money with this payment. I want to buy a basket of eggs so that I can raise 100 chickens in the summer that surround me while singing pee, pee. From the earnings of all these chickens, I will buy a robust pig with acorns, oats, cabbage, and chestnuts. He will fatten up without measure. He may just grow so fat that I see him dragging his belly. She will take him to market. She will undoubtedly make good money from him. She will buy a strong cow and cow and calf on the spot, who can jump and run throughout the campaign until the nearby forest." With this thought, she bounces around so violently that her pitcher falls. Poor milkmaid! What compassion! Farewell, milk, eggs, chickens, piglet, cow, and calf. Oh, foolish fantasy! What palaces you create in your mind! Win! Temper your joy, lest in leaping for happiness at your auspicious move, hope's little song be broken. Do not covet a better or more prosperous fate, for you will live in anxious anticipation, nothing ever satisfying you. Do not impatiently yearn for future good. Consider that even the present is not secure. Illustration, the scrupulous cats. Oh, what pain! Through a moment's carelessness, Misophones appeared, devoured a capon at a grill. After licking their lips, they conferred on whether to act prudently in eating the grill. Did they eat it? No, sir, it was a matter of conscience. The old man and death amidst mountains, along a rugged path, tripping over one rock after another, an old man laden with wood cursed his wretched fate. At last he fell, and finding himself barely able to rise, he called out, in angry desperation, 3 times, "Death!" The Grim Reaper, armed with a scythe in a skeletal frame, appeared at that point. But the old man, fearing to be dead, filled more with fear than respect, and trembled and stammered, "Madam, yes, I called you desperate, but in it," said the wretched one. "What do you want?" The old man replied, "Just carry my wood for me. He who believes himself unhappy should have patience, for even in the most pitiable situation, human life is always kind. The old man with the wood teaches us this." A monkey climbed an oak tree and plucked a green nut from its shell. He bit into it, and it tasted very bad. He threw it away and went hungry. This often happens to those who abandon their endeavors because they encounter what the monkey did at first, seemingly insurmountable obstacle. Illustration: the 2 friends and the bear. 2 friends encountered a bear. One, very afraid, hid on a tree branch. The other, trusting fate, pretended to be dead suddenly. The bear approached slowly, but since it said that bears never feed on corpses, he examined him without offence, sniffing his nose and mouth, feeling for any breath or movement. Then he left without suspicion. This fellow is as dead as my grandfather. The coward, showing off their great friendship, quickly descended from the tree, ran to embrace his companion, boasting about his good fortune in finding him unharmed, and finally said, "I must tell you that I noticed the bear had a message for you." "What was it?" "He told me," the friend replied, 2 little words, "in your ear. Beware of befriending the wrong person. The fox and the grapes. It's common knowledge that afternoon, in a fasting fox went hunting. She saw a grapevine. She stopped to gaze at the high vine and its dangling fruit. It filled her with longing and sadness, unable to reach the grapes with her claw, showing her teeth at the high vine adorned with black clusters amidst green leaves. She looked, leaped, and tried everything, but realized it was impossible. Then the fox said, "I give up." Here is the translation of the text. Preserving the name Pidol, I want to eat, they're not ripe. Don't show impatience for that. If it frustrates you, Fabio, make an attempt. Apply the story well and say they're not ripe fresh off the bat. Illustration, the Congress of the Mice ate, since Great Zappa, the white and blonde one, who after the waters of the flood became the universal father of every cat. It has been Miaragado who most cruelly pursued the unfortunate rat people. The truth is that, forced by his pursuit, the miserable one in Retopolis held her congress. Rocchioso, the eloquent one, proposed to put a rattle on them, and thus, by the noise, they would escape death. The project was approved unanimously. Who's going to execute it? No one. I'm short-sighted. I'm too old. I'm slimy, they said. The council ended like many others in the world. They propose a project without a second. They approve it. They make another one. What a marvel. But what about execution? That's the story. Illustration. The Congress of the Mice. The charlatan, if any of you hit the walls or throw yourself from a roof and land safely uninjured, I'll laugh very well. It doesn't matter, as long as I have my exquisite balm. With this report, a chatterbox gains a lot of opinion and more money, because the common people hanging on his lips love a charlatan more than 20 sages. For this reason, they are found today in every science they occupy, equally accredited chairs, academies, and stages. Proof of this truth is a famous doctor in eloquence, so abundant in charlatanism that he offered to teach a Borrico how to speak discreetly with a fertile beak in 10 years' term. The king knows it, he calls him, and at once orders him to give lessons to a donkey, but well understood that if he keeps his promise, he will be richly rewarded, but if not, he could die hanged. The doctor reassures us that he will surely make an eloquent ass speaker. A courtier quietly says, "Listen, good brother, your freshness terrifies me. It smells like hemp to my throat." "Don't be afraid, sir," responds the charlatan, "because I laugh. In 10 years' term we have the king, the donkey, or I. We won't die. No one finds a long term suspicious for important businesses, but they don't notice that they account wrongly without death. The sickle and the Antonine singing. The cicada spent the whole summer without making provisions for the winter. The cold forced her keep silent and take refuge in the warmth of a narrow abode. She found herself deprived of the necessary sustenance without a fly, without a worm, without wheat or barley. The ant lived there in the middle of the wall, and with 1,000 expressions of attention and respect she said, "Mrs. Ant, since your granaries have more than enough food for yourself, lend something to this sad cicada that used to be happy and never knew harm, nor feared it. Don't hesitate to lend me, as I promise to repay you in interest by the name I bear." The greedy ant responded with defiance, hiding her back the keys to the granary. "I'll lend what I earn with. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Paidol, an immense task. Tell me, lazy one, what have you done during the good weather?" Said the cricket, "To every passerby I sang joyfully without ceasing for a moment. Hello! You were singing when I was rowing. Well, now that I'm eating and dancing, despite your body, go ahead." The 2 rabbits between some bushes, pursued by dogs not running, flew a rabbit. Another rabbit emerged from its burrow and said, "Try, friend, what is this?" "What has to be?" He replied out of breath. "2 scoundrels, Galgo's greyhounds, are following me." "Yes." The other replicates, "I see them over there, but they're not Galgos." "Then what are they?" "Podencos." "You don't understand. They're Galgos, I tell you." "No, they're Podencos." In the midst of their argument, the dogs arrived and caught my 2 rabbits unawares. Those who for fleeting moments leave what matters, take this as an example. The fat dog and the wheelbarrow, the reader will surely have seen in a tavern or convent a clever contraption to move a grill. It's a wooden wheel with steps, and a dog trapped inside spins it with its paws. One day, a certain dog that powered the machine started saying, "Good work." And what do I get? "I'm sweating. Oh, woe is me." And eventually they'll throw me a bone left over from that partridge. Life here is quite uncomfortable. I must leave not only my home, but also the city. Just as they let him go, he fled discreetly, reaching a field where a mule was turning a wheelbarrow. He didn't see it clearly when he said, "Who's that there? It seems we're roasting meat too." "I don't roast meat." The male mule responded, "I draw water. I'll do that too." The dog jumped in, "Even though I'm skinny. This wheel is bigger, so I'll have to work more. But does it weigh?" "Well, then they'll have to give me a bigger portion. I'll have more glory." The wheelbarrow operator interrupted him. "I advise you to turn around and go back. This task is beyond the strength of a Gosquij or a small dog breed. Look at that crafty mule." He gave a good reply. I've read something similar in a certain Horace Flacco, who says it's a great mistake for an author to take on a burden he won't be able to carry later. that is trying to turn the wheel when the dog can't. The squirrel and the horse a squirrel was watching a generous chestnut horse gracefully training with spur and reins to gallop. Seeing him move so fast and in rhythm, she told him abruptly, "My lord, I'm not afraid of that spirit, lightness, and skill. I often do the same. Perhaps even better. I'm alive, active, mobile. I walk around work. I climb and descend. I don't need you." Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name, Paidalai. I am never quiet. The passage stops then the good colt very formally, and in the following terms responds to the squirrel. So many comings and goings, so many turns and turmoil. I want, friend, that you tell ma. Are they of any use? I worry, but not in vain. I know my trade, and in service of my master I am eager to display my skill. So some writers, too, may be squirrels if they spend all their natural heat on frivolous works. Illustration: the purchase of the donkey yesterday. A donkey passed down my street, the most adorned one I had ever seen in my life. The saddle and bridle were brand new with red and yellow silk fringes. The foal had bells, loop ribbons, and other trimmings, everything cut with care and in a very pretty design on the neck and thigh. It seems that the owner, who is said to be a sly gypsy, sold this jewel to a simple man. They add that it cost him a sense, a figure of speech, indicating a significant price. On his way home, he showed off his famous purchase to his neighbors, and one of them said, "Let's see, mate, if this little animal has such good looks as its dress." He started removing all the trimmings, and beneath the saddle, at first glance, they found that the donkey's back was badly injured with 6 wounds and 3 grazes, along with 2 old cracks and a tumor hidden under the cinch. "Donkey," he exclaimed, "I am more of a donkey than this very donkey. I am paying for these fake decorations. This incident will not escape my memory, as it neatly applies to a friend of mine who bought a well-bound book at a high price that was worth nothing. The Naturalist and the Lizards in a Garden. A curious naturalist spotted 2 lizards. He grabbed both and wanted to make an anatomy study right away. He's already caught the fatter one. He dismembers it member by member while using a microscope. He examines its legs, tail, skin, eyes, neck, back, and belly. He notes down his observations and then documents them. Various curious onlookers from his group come to see him. He shares what he's observing. Some are amazed, others ask questions, and some speculate. After finishing the anatomy, the wise man grew tired of studying the lizard. He released the other one, which was still alive. She returns to her cracks, where she discusses the event with her neighbors. There is no doubt about it. She tells them he saw it with these very eyes. The man spent an entire day examining our friend's body. Some question if such a spectacle warrants being called creaturous, a term of disrespect. How can one bear such injustice when we have things so worthy of contemplation and written about? Don't despair, noble group, we are worth much more than they say. And will they then not praise certain authors who write iniquitous works? Those who critique them greatly honor them, even if not seriously the nonsense should be noticed far above. Let's not give in to their absurdities. Lagartijas and the claim of worth Lagartijas lizards, a reason for them to repeat. We're worth a lot, no matter what they say. Certain animals play with a blind chicken. Some small animals, all 4-legged, once played with a blind chicken. A little dog, a fox, and a mouse, that's 3. A squirrel, a hare, and a monkey, that's 6. The monkey blindfolded them all, as he knew best how to handle his hands. A mole heard the commotion and said, "Well, by Jove, I'm going too, and I'll fit in with a spin." He asked to join, and the monkey, very cautiously, granted him entry lightly out of mockery. The mole took 20 little steps at each pace because his eyes were covered by skin on his first turn. As expected, he was easily caught. It was his turn to be the blind chicken, and who better to play it than him? But he, with a smirk for appearance's sake, told the monkey, "What do we do? Go ahead, shall I get blindfolded by you?" If he who is blind and knows it acts as if he can see, who would confess his idiocy? Illustration: the mole and other animals, the bear, the monkey, and the pig, a bear, who was making a living dancing on 2 feet. Not quite mastering the steps, he practiced a dance he had learned only half-heartedly. Wanting to seem like a person, he said to a monkey, "How's it going?" The monkey, being clever, replied, "Not great." "I believe," retorted the bear, "that you're not helping me much." "Well, isn't my posture graceful? Don't I execute the steps with elegance?" A pig was present and exclaimed, "Bravo! Very good!" No better dancer has ever been seen, or will be seen. Hearing this, the bear did a mental calculation and modestly exclaimed, "When the monkey criticized me, I started to doubt. But now that the pig commends me, I must be doing something wrong." An author kept this saying for future reference. If the wise one doesn't approve, it's bad. If the fool applauds, it's worse. 2 parrots and a cockatiel. A lady brought 2 parrots from Santo Domingo. The island is split between French and Spanish, so each little animal spoke a different language. They placed them on a balcony and it became Babel. From French and Spanish they created such a mix that in the end they couldn't speak either language. The French parrot picked up some Spanish words, though few. The Spanish parrot almost took over all the French vocabulary. The mistress ordered them separated, and the French parrot then reformed the words he had learned from an out-of-fashion language. The Spanish parrot, on the other hand, didn't forget the gibberish, and even used it to enrich his own language. He eventually asked for garbanzo beans in French, and from the balcony across the way, a learned cockatiel burst into laughter, mocking the parrot. The parrot replied only with a shameful silence, "You're not one for purity." And she said, "To each their own." Indeed, parrots are like people. The bell and the escapist in a certain cathedral. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Pidal, a bell, was only to be rung on solemn days. With the harshest sound and a measured pace, it would chime 4 or 3 times, no more. Because of this, and being larger than the usual mark celebrated, it became renowned throughout the region. The town under its jurisdiction had an unhappy village with a small population. Its parish church was a poor little chapel with a tiny bell tower resembling a hermitage. A cracked clapper, leaning against one side, played the main role there. In order to imitate this bell tower, the neighborhood decided that the clapper should be rung slowly and only on special occasions, something that pleased the villagers so much that the clapper became known as a large bell. It is very plausible, for gravity often compensates for lack of capacity. They rarely part their lips, believing they are imitating the wise. The flint and the link, a link of cruel treatment, was what the flint received one day, as it often hurt him to produce sparks. The flint argued with the link, and as they separated, the flint said, "Stay with God. Are you worth anything without me?" The link replied, "Yes, I am just as valuable without you. This material example should be considered by every writer. Lengthy study does not necessarily foster natural talent. Flint cannot shine without the help of a link, and there is no good disposition that can be seen without art. If everyone works separately, both are useless. The flute, playing donkey, this fable, whether it succeeds or fails, occurred to me by chance. Near some meadows in my land, a donkey happened to pass by. He found a flute among them, left behind by a boy through chance. The donkey approached to sniff it, and let out a snorpy chance. The air from the flute managed to escape, and the flute played by chance. "Oh," said the donkey, "we play so well, and they say us music is bad." There are donkeys without artistic rules who hit the mark by chance once in a while. Pedro de Salas, 17th century, the country mouse, and the courtier, a courtier mouse, gave a wild mouse rustic accommodation. He ate frugally at a meagre table. Although poor, he still had access to the finest treats from the villager scraps, grains, and whatever else was left behind. The best dish for him was a mulatto's canteen zatico. The wise mouse, with a serious gaze, said to the country mouse, I said, "Stingy, miserable, how do you tolerate this kind of life? If there is such abundant food in the village, why doesn't everyone enjoy it? No more country life. My friend! Come with me, and you'll see how friendships flourish. Step by step, he guided the mouse through caves to the palace, warning him silently to be on the alert for any door sounds. On beautifully carpeted staircases they played, jumped and frolicked until their bellies growled, slowly entering the pantry where they were greeted with two friends buried in cheese, without offending any enemies. Here is the English translation. While preserving the name Pidal through a hidden path, it leads to its greatest treasure, which holds a pantry filled with delights. Now, among the preserves, he says, your herbs, hermit, have they enjoyed a year of such good weather? Look at my glory. This is a feast, not yours, poor soul. The finest dish echoes a cat's meow and a door creaks. Ah, our end is certain. The courtier exclaims to the village mouse. Dejectedly, everyone scatters in their own way, finding a tiny opening to this rare treasure. The harsh little mouse discovers a portal to such a wondrous sight, and turning towards the palace, taking slow breaths, he says, Oh, fire in my unease, your sweetest delicacies are mere illusions. Do you purchase your tastes with such fears? Death to the eye. No more courtly life for me. I shall choose my herbs in peace, not engage in your preserved treats at such a high cost. Your wide door leads to fear, and your gift contains 1,000 poisons. Divine Affection. Valladolid, 1638. Illustration, Josie de Caes, Madrid, 676-7050. The rest of the text continues with similar poetic verses and anecdotes. Here is the translated text, preserving the name Pidal. As there it lacked the flavor of prohibition which our insatiable appetite regards as seasoning. With each bite she found it more bitter. Seeing that the remedy was effective, the doctor urged her, saying, Madam, eat, for it matters to your life. She, already satiated between her fingers, brushed away the ashes, and, in a fit of tobacco, spat out each particle. The doctor implored her, and she, completely defeated, replied, Sir, I cannot take it away from here. Let her live or die. From then on, such was the horror that greed instilled in her that 15 days before, thinking it was already upon her, she wept on Carnus Dolendus on a Wednesday of Ash. For you and you for another, Act 1, Scene I. The prohibited fruit when I was a boy. There would be grape harvests at my house, and grapes scattered on the ground never tempted me. Time passed, and later They hung grapes in the kitchen for winter, and I, seeing them high up, raged at the thought of eating them, to the point that one day, climbing to reach them, I fell and broke my ribs. Contempt with contempt. Act 1, Scene A. Illustration across the bridge, which is dry, and an abbot, very fat and reverent, was walking along, reaching a river. He attempted to cross the ford. And when a shepherd emerged, he said, "Beware, for a traveller drowned yesterday because he mistook the crossing." The abbot asked the shepherd, coughing, "How far is it from here to the bridge?" 2.5 leagues, replied the shepherd. And the abbot answered, between a fit of coughing, if the one who drowned had taken the bridge, even though it's farther away, he would have crossed the river by now. And twisting the bridle on his mule, he said, "Across the bridge, which is dry, it can't be." Act 1, Scene Ever. A Portuguese challenged another and waited for him on a mountain that climbing to its summit would tire even a mountain cat. The challenged arrived there, dead from the strenuous journey, and upon seeing his opponent, he said, crushed and discouraged, "I can't move. Why did you call me here?" He replied, "Because I have less to do." The Night, Act 2, Scene, the pleasure of vengeance. A insufferable Basque walked down a street, and as he passed by a fence, he received a terrible shove. Enraged, though in vain, he turned back to the guilty fence, and delivered such a powerful punch that his hand dislocated. He became enraged, took 2 arms, drew his sword, and there, with pure knife strikes, he shattered the fence into pieces. Believing himself avenged, he left, saying, in his own way, "Break hands, crack a joint. Then take what you've brought." Illustration Christou, Baldy Monroy, Alcaligodera, 612-1649. Nature can outdo art, poetry is acquired. Tripulino, it's a gift from nature. Alfonso, art perfects it and even invents it at times. Tripulino, no, that's different. It's a distinct art from nature. Alfonso, how do you prove that? Tripulino, listen, these very same men engaged in this dispute, one with industry and... Translation, diligence told a cat to hold a candle with its paws, and while the cat was dining, it will assist at the table in this manner. The cat claimed that art overcomes nature, however. Someone holding an opposing view placed a mouse nearby. As soon as the cat saw it, it ran, dropping the candle and attacking the mouse, signaling with this act that nature can surpass art. The Enchantment of Jealousy, 3rd day, illustration Antonio de Sol's Alcal, 1610-1686. It was nothing to the eye. A stone was thrown at a man in anger, struck with such force that it knocked out one of his eyes. He asked the surgeon if the eye would be lost due to pain, and the proud surgeon replied, "No, sir, I have it under control." The Dr. Carlino, Scene Day illustration, João de Maitos, Fragoso Elveto, Portugal, 1692. The dog and the ass, a man was returning home to rest, and a small dog that he owned started greeting him enthusiastically. A foal was nearby, envious of the dog, and it wanted to impress its master in the same way, so it stood on its hind legs and knocked over one of the horse's jaws. Draw your own conclusions. Lorenzo called me, 3rd day, other stories. A shaving, for heaven's sake, a poor shepherd with no money used a razor to groom his beard, resulting in an uneven cut. As the razor was badly tarnished, it couldn't part the hair, but it shaved his face raw. The shepherd realized his mistake, but decided to keep quiet. At that moment, they heard someone beating a dog on the street. The spirit. There was a spirit haunting a house, causing trouble for its inhabitants. It would hit them with jars, steal their clothes, and throw dishes. The residents, desperate to escape, moved to another neighborhood. On the day of their move, while the owner was retrieving the last few items, he saw the spirit carrying all of them down the stairs. He asked slowly, "Where are you going?" The spirit replied, "Thea, aren't we moving?" The owner suggested, "If that's the case and you follow us, it would be better to stay here and save ourselves some effort. The job of women." Queen say. Elizabeth of Hungary, Sende, the doctor's mule, a barber, visited a patient in a remote village who had an abscess with excruciating pain. The cure took time, and the patient grew impatient. "Brother, have patience," said the skilled surgeon. "This condition is slow to heal, but we must tend to it." Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Pidal. "You have hydropsia. Get me that inkwell for me, because I want to prescribe you a new, effective remedy." And when the poor horse gave the pen, being restive, it set the shoe and burst its hoof. So immediately the pain ceased in the sick animal, feeling better. And he exclaimed, "God alive, the horse is a better cure than the doctor." See and believe, first illustration, John Pérez de Montalbán, Madrid, 1602, 1638. Rejected witness, a mayor had a pretty donkey for his needs, and when one day a comrade came to ask it borrowed, he, to get rid of him, said it was in the mountains. But as the donkey snorted at that time, the other said, "Do you see, comrade, how the donkey is at home, and you were wrong?" The mayor, very angry, answered without trouble, "It's not like that, and whoever thinks differently lies, for although the donkey says it with unequal size, I say the opposite here, and it's a bad thing said, that no one should give more credit to a donkey than to a mayor, being a good man and the donkey a campy pickerer." The children of fortune, first day illustration, Francisco de Leyva Emlaga, mid-17th century. Precipitation, a young man, sick of his eyes, wanted to cure his father, and he intended to do so as if it were his mother. Seeking a remedy, he looked through a medical book. He found a chapter on what he was looking for. "Eyelid herbs" was the first line, and without reading more, like a star that God guides, he went to the field to look for eyelids. He brought 2 very good lunches, and whether he wanted to or not, put a dozen pairs of them on his father's eyes, putting a very tight cloth over them afterward. His poor father's eyes popped out immediately, leaving him blind. He returned to read the lines angrily, and when he looked at them slowly, he saw his own eyes. For the eyelids are good for getting rid of them. The president lady, first day the madman, because of grief is sane 15. In Seville there was a madman with such an uneven topic that he always carried a 1/4 tone stone on his shoulder, and could see any dog of any breed sleeping. If you left it fall, he would turn into a paste. He found a famous Podenco from a hat maker carrying the law on his shoulders, and left him hang. Indignant, the hat maker went out with a club and gave him 2,000 blows, repeating after each fierce blow, "Didn't you see that it was a Podenco, madman?" The poor fellow then, even if he saw a mastiff or a hideous dog, when he was about to throw the stone, turning it back, he said, "Beware, it's a Podenco." There is no reason against a father. Sinde, illustration, I Alvaro Cubillo de Aragon, born in Granada at the beginning of the 17th century. The donkey between 2 thoughts. They put 2 piles of clean barley to a donkey. And here is the translation, preserving the name Pidal a Hecada Camo Anos Gordos P1s. And when the donkey was put into effect, an equal distance apart, it became embarrassed because it was a discreet donkey, doubting which one to choose. Desiring and doubting, it stood looking at both without eating all that day. Love as it should be. Act 1, Curse of Corcovado. A Corcovado had its garment stolen, and since it was made to fit its shape, like for a tortoise, when it realized the theft, it didn't bother much more than to wish the thief, may God bring him well, the invisible prince of the chest. Act 1, Sebastian of Villaviciosa. He flourished in the mid-17th century. The deceiving dream a man dreamt one night, that a great sum of doblons came to him from Cairo, and on horseback. He dreamt he went to receive them, and when he tried to pull out his nail, seeing a heap of gold, suddenly he fell off the mule poof. He hit his head on a sharp stone and remained, in short, without money or sleep, bruised and in the dark. Our Lady of the Pillar, Journey 1, Jason de Herrera, born in Madrid at the end of the 16th century. The liar, they told a knight about the whispering, that there was much he lied, and he said to a page, I want to reform. I entrust you to always be with me, and if I tell some stories when you see me lingering in what I am going to say, pull me by the cape at that very point, and don't let me lie. The page waited for an opportunity, and his master, on the first occasion to lie, which was already his inclination, said, In one of my houses I have a hall 1,000 steps long, and it's not narrow. And how wide was it? Asked a listener. The page pulled him by the cape and answered, 6 steps precisely. They replied, Then how did you design a hall so long that you only gave it 6 steps of width? And those who asked him as he passed responded, I would have liked to give it more, but they didn't let me. Rodiana Y. Amistad, Journey to the Fox, and the lion, they'd about the lion having bad breath, and displeased with this opinion. As this animal is a king, he ordered everyone to smell his mouth, and then say if it smelled good or bad. Whoever arrived said, Your Majesty smells bad. And he, with anger and bravado, killed and bit him. The fox went and asked, Does it smell bad? I have a sore nose, she replied, and I couldn't smell anything. Duolo de Yano y Amistad, Journey 2, Lewes de Belmont, Berm Desborn in Seville, 1587. Archaeologists, certain priests of San Miguel and Santa Ana were disputing, proving one another the antiquity of their house. And one day, perhaps strolling through the yard of his church, the priest of San Miguel. Here is the English translation, preserving the name Pidal. He discovered a musty and dark slab and some letters. Spending time cleaning them, they read by this way Selen. He rushed home to the bishop like lightning, shouting loudly, My justice is very plain. Illustrious sir, this stone marked the entrance to a cave where the Moor Selim would enter to store his booty from the loss of Spain. The bishop was taken aback, but the priest of Santa Ana, who was present, said, Let's see where this very Moorish stone speaks so Castellana. They both went, and upon entering the same area, they found another half-broken slab, and when they joined them together, they read here, The latrines of this house are cleaned. The Renegade of Valladolid, First Journey illustration Antonio Mira, Diamescua 1578, 1640 the cigarette, and the anti-17 The ant from her anthill was joyfully carrying what she had gathered in the summer to her granary. A cigarette arrived and said, You can give me some of this, for I cannot earn it, as winter is prolific. But the ant, with a wise response, sang, Since you sang in summer, dance, sister, in winter. What concerns Vela, Third Journey illustration Don Pedro Calden de la Barca Madrid, 1600-1681, for A0A glassblower, a suitor of a lady from Tremacan, had a close friend in Tetuan. One day the lady asked him to write to his friend and have a monkey sent. As someone who loves always strives to obtain what his lady commands, he carefully chose 3 or 4 monkeys to send. The foolish man wrote the number in figures, and since there is a 0 in Tetuan, his friend read, "Friend, for people I am willing to please, immediately send me 304 monkeys." He was saddened by this, but much more so was the glass blower when, within just a few days, he saw 300 monkeys descend with a loud noise, each making hundreds of mischievous sounds. The secret spoken out, first journey, scene xie, illustration, food and cunning to 4 or 5 little boys their father would give food each day, and since the portions were equal, one day he forgot about one. The boy, not wanting to ask, which is a grave disrespect for children, was starving. A cat was meowing at that moment, and the boy said, What's that? Are you asking me for bones when you haven't even given me meat? The painter of his disgrace, third journey scene xe, illustration consolation. They tell of a wise man who one day was so poor and miserable that he only sustained himself on some herbs he gathered. Is there anyone, he thought to himself, poorer and more wretched than me? And when he turned his face around, he found the answer. He saw another wise man gathering the leaves he had thrown away. Life is a dream. First journey, disdaining human grandiose, contemplate this example. A philosopher who was in a mountain or a valley, it doesn't matter if it's tangled below, pondering on the vanity of human life, said, if I were to die here, all my effort and work would be nothing but dust. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name, a piedal being in high spirits. He saw a soldier passing by. He began to speak with him, and after a long conversation, he said, is it possible that you have never seen the face of Alexander, our Caesar, of him whose praises crown him with laurel wreaths, and whom the Loeb acclaims as king? The philosopher replied, isn't he a man? What difference does it make whether you see him or not? Or, if you want to escape from common flattery, let a flower rise from the ground, take it and tell Alexander that I say he should make a flower like her for himself. You will then realize that no trophies, applause, glories, laurel wreaths, triumphs, or praises are beyond human reach, as he cannot, after so many victories, create such an easy flower that can be found in any field. The Schism of England, Act 2, Scene I. Poet's passion, listen to what happened to a poet and his lover, as they say that a spirit inflames his chest, whose ardor satisfies the heart's flame. He was enraged, and so delighted by the affection, he felt that everything he wrote loudly expressed. He encountered a lion on his way at the same time as his lover entered with food, and since he was driven by passion, watch out for the lion, he roared. And his light-hearted lover, already fearing his tickles, rolled down the entire state with her face in her hands, exclaiming, Ho, Holy Virgin, save Mari Gazada from these bothersome claws. Left hungry, and the roguish lover rolled away. Lances of love and fortune, Act 3, Scene. Chevy, blaming others for one's own shortcomings, a man woke up deaf, and realizing he could not hear what they were saying, he exclaimed, what on earth made you speak to each other in such a strange way today? They tried speaking gently to him again, but he insisted. There's something. I wish everyone would stop talking today. He refused to acknowledge that he was at fault. You think that the blame doesn't lie with you, yet, even if it pains you, it is yours, and you are unaware of it, because you, deaf man, in the madness of not understanding the beauty that the world is telling you aloud. The painter of his disgrace, Act 2, Scene I, not speaking clearly, he is wrong for not expressing himself clearly, pains and sorrows should not be conveyed through vague phrases. A man's tooth ached. A barber came to extract it, and while the mouth was open, "Which one hurts?" he asked. The patient responded, "The second to last." The barber, not very skilled with "second to last," pulled out the last one. The tongue quickly went to inquire about the pain and said in bloodied tones, "The bad tooth isn't that one." He apologized by saying, "Isn't it the last one in the row?" "Yes," he answered. "Then watch this," the barber replied, pulling out the one next to the last. Last line, so it remained for want of clear speech with the evil and without two good ones. From the Two Lovers of Heaven, Act 2. Scene by. Contenting everyone. There are two well-known places near Regensburg, one called Aegir and the other Macarandona. A single priest, a humble servant of God, served both, conducting Mass for both on holidays. A neighbor from Macarandona went to Aegir, and hearing the priest begin to sing the preface, he noticed that he said, "Gracious Aegir, give thanks to Aegir," loudly that day, but not to Macarandona. Enraged, he exclaimed, "The priest gives thanks to Aegir as if we hadn't paid our tithes here." Upon hearing such valid arguments from the proud Macarandonians, the host was humiliated. He asked the sacristan the reason, and the sacristan explained it to him. From then on, every time the priest began to sing the preface, he would add, "Tibi semper et ubique, you gracious a Macarandona, I offer you thanks always, and everywhere to Macarandona," ensuring that the offering was dedicated there. The guests they bring pleasure to. When a company of soldiers arrived in a place, a villainous man began shouting, "2 soldiers for me." One soldier replied, "Everyone wants to excuse themselves," questioning his manner of requesting it. The villainous man answered, "Wes, even though they cause disturbances when they come, it is justly done, as I enjoy their departure." The soldiers request a soldier with great courage on his deathbed, said, "Furthermore, it is my will that my comrades carry me in my coffin. Give 30 reals to each comrade so they can drink to my health." The clever slave trader Amor captured a gangly slave and, pretending to be mute, tried to make his rescue easier on the ship. When the Moor noticed he was defective, the slave spoke. He sold him at a very low price. "Outside the ship, Moor," said the slave. "I am not mute. I know how to speak." The Moor, upon hearing this, responded, "You were a fool to pretend to be silent here. If I had heard you talk, I would have given you an even lower price." Illustration learned: a good trader drummer returning from a party asked a friar, who was also returning from the feast to his convent, "Where are you coming from?" "Drumming," he replied. "What did they give you then?" The friar answered, "Little, certainly 50 reals, food and drink, which is not less, transportation paid for, no other trinkets but these I have." "Is that little?" asked the father. "I come from preaching," said the friar, "and even for food they didn't give me anything. As you see, I return on foot." The drummer then retorted angrily and arrogantly, "Then drummer and friar preacher are the same. Learn a good trade." And here is the translation of the text while preserving the name Pedal Null. No complaint, he did not complain, knowing that we are not all friars and tambourine players. From 2 causes, 2 effects. Act 2, Scene X. Illustration: the bad painter. A bad painter bought a bad house, and very happily a bad friend showed it to him. First, a bad room, and he said, "Do you see this bad room? Well, let me whiten it, and I'll paint it all by hand, the walls and ceilings, and you'll see how nice it becomes." The friend, laughing, replied, "It will look good indeed. But if you paint it first and then whitewash it, it will be even better. Go." from heaven's two lovers. Act 1, scene heavy, liberality poor and wretched. One day a man reached the feet of the most learned Alexander Tabandra, celebrated in poetry, and wanting to make peace with some favor from Caesar, though in vain, between talent and fortune. He gave him such precious gifts that they could obliterate ambition when reduced to atoms. The wise man remained suspended without responding, afraid of the gift and uncertain. Alexander asked it, "How do you give kindness to forgetfulness and memory insult? How can you be wise if you are ungrateful?" Tabandrus looked at him and said, "If taste is in the hand of the giver and not of the receiver, I do not owe you thanks for the good you do me here. You must thank me for giving you this opportunity where my chest showed such greatness, since you would not be liberal if you were not poor. From knowledge of good and evil." Act 1, scene sign. The blind man there was a blind man in London who could not distinguish objects even in broad daylight. One night, as it rained heavily like one of the past storms, he walked down the streets with burnt straws for light. Passby commented, "If you don't use your light, why? The blue you carry it." The blind man replied, "If I don't see the light, whoever comes after me will, so they won't find me here. This light that you see is not for my benefit if I cannot see it, but for them to see me." From the Schism of England, Act 1, Scene V, funeral fee. Someone called the sacristan and asked, "How much do you charge to bury me?" The sacristan replied, assuming 20 reals. "Would you take 16? He inquired. No, the sacristan countered. "It costs more." The bereaved one retorted, "Well, if it's cheaper for you, I'll be buried in 17, because I won't die any sooner, just 'cause it costs a quarter less, from speech and misfortunes of names." Act 3, Scene V, softening the bed with hunger and fatigue. A friar arrived at an inn one day and asked the hostess what there was to eat. "If I don't kill a chicken," she said, "there's nothing." "Who could eat it?" he asked with great reluctance. "Someone tender will," she replied, "because I know a unique secret for softening it." And taking hold of the live rooster, she observed, "See how its feet." Here is the translation of the provided text, preserving the name Pidal. He was burning it, and our Reverend Father found it surprisingly soft. Although hunger might have been the reason, he attributed it to that and lay down in bed. The bed was hard, disturbing him, so, realizing the secret, he pushed it against his feet for light. The guest exclaimed upon seeing the flame, "What is this?" He replied, "Oh, a maid, for she softened the bed, burned the bed's feet." Not always the worst is true. Second journey, scene C. Illustration, Francisco de Rojas y Zarilla Toledo, 1607-1648. The doctor's mule, a doctor dismounted to speak with another doctor's, standing at the door of a patient he was visiting for a posthem or phlegmon in his throat. They discussed how the patient lived, and to make conversation easier, the mule at the portal sent a message that the patient lived on the ground floor. The mule, with nonchalance, adorned with a cloak and ornaments, entered the room where the patient lay. The patient, sensing the hooves, complained in pain. This is the doctor. He took the pulse without looking. The mule, unaware of its significance, bit down on the arm to take the pulse clumsily. Turning away in embarrassment, he tried to hide the mule, but burst out laughing, causing the posthem to pop. The doctor, seeing this, told the mule, "Go on," and to the patient said, "Ha! Doctor, I am utterly astounded by the case and speechless. My mule, who couldn't pop the posthem. If this happens again, even if the case troubles me, send your mule here and stay at home. Also, insult is poison. Third, journey the pig. Now listen to a story, if you will. In a part of the world, let's not focus on the specific location. Herida was a great sorceress who could transform people into different animals. Some became elephants, others cats or dogs, some graceful tigers, and some clumsy pigs. Anyway, as the biblical ark of Noah sailed, she had 2 pens filled with her creatures. A man arrived who knew the Countess' spell and reached this place. He began to charm people back to their human forms, jumping for joy at being free. He approached one covered in an abominable pig form, struggling with spells and gestures to break the curse. But as he couldn't be charmed, all he did was grunt, retreat, and charge. The charming man struggled to help, but eventually gave up. The cursed pig looked at him and said, "I enjoy being a pig, please don't tire yourself." The most noble beauty, first journey illustration, Joan Ruiz, and born in Mexico, bore around 1581, 1639. The offended offender, hear this story, sir, in a house where conversations were taking place. One day, 2 people emerged alone into the corridor. They had a dispute. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name, Pidal discovering, and in her face, one gave the other a slap. The one who received it loudly and immediately said to the other, "Take that." People inside heard the blow but did not see the hand, attributing the victory to the one singing glory so proudly and haughtily. And thus, with this invention, came the aggravement of him who had given the slap to the other. Act 3 of the Proof of Promises, the coward, a brave. Man drew his sword against a hen, and fleeing, he said, "Man, since you've killed me, feel free to take a swing." People came running at the commotion, and one who arrived to find him wounded, seeing that he was not injured, asked, "What made you say you were dead if you weren't hurt?" He replied, "Could I not kill myself? The wise one among the mad." A downpour fell upon a place, incapacitating everyone it touched, and a wise man, fortunately escaping the storm, observed that madness was pervasive throughout the area. He got wet and went mad himself, saying, "In this, what do I lose? Here where no one is sane, why should I be?" Act 1, Scene 15 of the examination of husbands after my death, Diogenes, as his end drew near, instructed that he not be buried. His friend argued that his body would become food for wild beasts. Diogenes said, "I'll have a stick to defend myself." His friend retorted, "Don't you consider that dead you won't feel or protect yourself?" The wise man replied, "Then your fears are groundless if I am senseless. What difference does it make whether I'm eaten by wild beasts or worms?" From the deeds of the Marquis of Cadihi, who asks, achieves in silence, who persuaded, who won without attempting, who forced without begging, who achieved without asking. Even with the gods who understand human intentions, they negotiate their desired outcome through constant pleading. To conclude, here's a comparison. A sheep arrived at the lion's court to seek justice from a butchering wolf for the death of one of her 2 sons. With her other surviving lamb, she prostrated herself before the lion's feet, either hesitating or emphasizing her dire situation in hopes of eliciting more compassion. The lion was hungry, and either because the sheep didn't complain or he didn't understand her plea, he acted foolishly, pretending to believe that the lamb was complimenting him. The sheep, agonizingly bleating, immediately began declaring her intent. But he said, "Don't silence your voice so much if telling your grievances is your purpose here. Start speaking. I'll listen as best I can, since we lions know more about hearts than we do minds. From friendship, here is the translation. Preserving the name Padal Act 2, scene of the ruin with the command once while sick, the lion called for an assembly to appoint a judge oversee its kingdoms. All the animals, sensing his gentle nature, requested that he rule them. Eventually he accepted the position, and to grant him authority along with power, the lion gave him its claws. Joyfully, a magnificent horse arrived as a gift from a dear friend. Using his newfound power, he gave 2 nailed gnaws to this innocent friend. Seeing its flesh torn unjustly, the horse cried out in tears, "You are blameless. It is those who gave these claws to such a wretched creature that should be held accountable." The lion, enraged, took away his claws with a fierce swipe and turned him into a mere cart horse. Whoever wields power understands its delicate balance. Many have lost their claws for not wielding it wisely. Act 2, Scene V. The magpie with borrowed feathers. Long ago, there was a magpie known to everyone, but no one bothered to tell its story because it was so common. Thus it went untold, and many remained ignorant of it. That's why I will tell it now, as it fits the context, and you should listen to understand Leona's defense. The magpie wanted to attend the eagle's wedding, but arrived without any adornment. It had decorated itself with feathers stolen from other birds, both its body and wings. As soon as it reached the wedding, every feather was recognized, and the eagle, furious, attacked it with such ferocity that it set a precedent for others. "Stop," said the magpie. "What head is this anger about?" "Just to please you," she replied, "and because I wanted to attend your brighter feast, did I steal these feathers." The eagle retorted, "Foolish one, wouldn't you expect my forgiveness, given your meager fortune? If you had brought your own feathers or stayed home." Act 2, Scene VI, illustration, Fray Gabriel T. Ailes, Terzo di Milano, Madrine 71, 1648a. The Lion and the Fox, 19. Once upon a time, an old lion was not unusual for a lion who has walked far in his youth. Unable to hunt due to his disability and hunger, he sharpened his intellect to find food without moving. Summoning a royal court, he issued a decree stating that, as king of all animals, they should come to his lair. They all gathered, and he spoke. "Honorable subjects, I have received a new and strange complaint, one that fills me with sorrow and passion. It is said that the lion's breath smells extremely bad. It's not befitting a royal subject, ruler over so many brutes, to instead offend them with such foul odor." Thus, seeking a solution, he realized it affected them. Aleph, they came close to his mouth. They would smell if any rotten teeth gave off unpleasant odors. Here is the translation preserving the name Paidaidal. Why did he take off? And in this way soothe the infamous insult. He put himself inside, entering one by one, and none came out. The fox, the center of malice, smelled the post, inviting her to enter to see and visit the lion. She answered, "Oh!" And peeking her head, she said, "For not being considered rough and unkempt, I do not enter your majesty's presence. For as I go through hardships, I've had some garlic for lunch, and there's no angle a king like for a king, the smell of garlic. Your majesty, exhale this weapon, for if I sense its bad odor, it's plain that there's a hole in my tooth, and that the tool is on another matter, as I'm without equipment, and I've never been a barber." The reverse suitor, Act 1, Scene C. The doctor's Mueller, a poor man, had a postumer, they say, hidden on one side, and was desperate to see the ignorant phlegm with which the doctor told him, "If you don't drink by hand, you'll die, brother," because that's hydrocytosis. He prescribed a remedy, and when he reached for the pen, to have him sign. The mole, being somewhat restless, stamped a hoof, I'd say it was a paste on his side, and burst the postomer. Already ripe with this, stopping the pain, she looked at it open and said, "In postomers, the mule is more accurate than her doctor. The medical love, Act 1, Scene I, the donkey and the pig Lord John de Silva. Listen, a villain in his house raised a pig and a donkey. He showered so much affection on the pig that even the donkey felt envious, which is very donkey-like behavior. St. Martin's Day arrived, and he heard the donkey snorting loudly. She peeked out the window and saw the poor pig, with the knife at her throat, snoring without sleeping. 'For this did you fatten him?' said the donkey. 'I went to the mountain for firewood. My saddle will come later.' Adverse fortune of D. Alvaro de Luna, Journey 2, Scene IV. The bad enjoy, the good more who has come from evil to him. I know for certain a lord who is generous and tender, who, when winter sets in, after the heater warms his bed, gets up in his shirt, causing laughter as he goes naked. His people made fun of him and thought it was madness to shiver from the cold and give tooth for tooth to whoever could warm up. But after taking his walks, he would return almost frozen to bed, saying, 'To appreciate the heat I now acquire, it's necessary first to experience the cold.' The False Arcadia, Journey 1, illustration, Lope de Vega, Madrid, 1592, 1635. My father says I should eat on this occasion. I'll tell you a story very similar. There was an old student in your image and condition, a gentleman in Salamanca, and he wrote to him that he should eat whatever was cheapest in that free square. He asked his servants what a cow was worth, and they answered 20 ducats for the buyer. Then he replied, and 2 partridges. 4 reals, though. Let's eat partridges. Here is the translation of the text, while preserving the name Pido Bay. Sembra in Benatiera, Act 1. If the donkey stumbles, nothing. A traveller asked a farmer carrying a load what he had there, and the farmer, preemptively cautioning against misfortune, replied, nothing. If the donkey stumbles, the load was fragile. Women's glances. Act 2. Scene if evil makes good appreciated. In my land, a whipped man gave the executioner 100 coins to give him silently, for he was honourable and delicate. As he left through the door, his hand raised in farewell, he left the first person he greeted with an open back. The man turned his head away from the harsh blow and asked, "And the money?" And here the executioner answered, "Everyone should be like this, and then he will understand his debt to me for yesterday's money. If it remains, I give it to him, but he well knows that I could not know the courtesy of those he awaits ahead. Las Cuentas del Gran Capitan." Act 2, illustration, the farmer, his son, and the ass. I do not know how it must be for me, sir, as it happens to the other farmer who took the ass to sell. He and his son went on foot behind the beast, while people grumbled at seeing the ass free. The old man climbed onto the ass, and there were those who said, "Carry the young man on foot, and you ride." And then the old got off, and the young man climbed up, but then someone said, "The elderly man goes on foot, and the impolite young man rides like a gentleman." What an unfortunate fire! The old man then climbed back onto the ass with the young man, and a whole crowd began to shout, "2 on an ass! No!" Seeing such unrest, he tied their feet together, carrying the colt on his shoulder, him and his son. But then they made fun of both of them, saying, "In this way you carry yourselves, fools. Who could better carry you?" The old man then took the ass to a river, and I suspect that on these eve nights, seeing my own ingenuity, which cannot please everyone, I will end up throwing the whole ass into the river con soupans. Lo coma, Act 2, mistake, he can mistake, commissioned a painter to paint the Last Supper, and after it was finished, he went to see it and found it full of people. He counted 13 apostles and said, very alarmed, "This whole canvas is wrong. I don't intend to pay him." He realized one apostle was extra. And the wise painter said, "Take it, sir. This one, while dining, will leave." Amos in saber, a quain, Act 3. Scene easy to criticize, they write that. Cicero, hearing the Gallic representative who had an excellent opinion of himself in triumphal Rome, heard him whistling and murmuring and began to say, "Young men, writing is genius, not whistling." This is prohibited in man because in equal measure any animal can whistle, but only a human being can write. Locu hadis, Act 1, Scene V, do not sign the letter translation. A king once said to a secretary, "Write to a certain kingdom that they make 100 pikes for us." Kings never speak harshly, and without asking, he wrote to the kingdom to send them 100 pikes. They sent them quickly, and while the king was on a balcony with the secretary, he saw the 100 pikes arrive. When asked, "What is this?" the secretary replied they were bringing what he had ordered. The king, discreetly replying, said, "Let's distribute them like this, 50 for me, as I sign without reading, and the rest for you, since it's lighter to do what you don't understand than to think about it. You can apply this tale." The Key of Honor, Act 1, Phoenix V. The woodcutter and Death listened to the story. An old man in his 80s would bring wood from a mountain to the city of Athens. As the work was so great, he begged Death to take him, saying, "Come on, Death, Death, don't you come." One day Death heard him and appeared before the old man in dry armor. She spoke through the bones without a tongue. "Tell me, what do you want?" He replied, shaking with fear at seeing her, "Help me carry this little load of wood." Who can do better? Act 2, rule of private servant sympathy, for it is not a small beginning to hate a servant when one understands that he knows more than his master. A story was told about a king who said to a great private, "A paper worries me, and if I wrote it myself, I want to see another from you and choose the best." The knight wrote to him, and it was the best of both. Seeing that the king claimed it was his own, he left and told his eldest son out of 3, "Let's leave the kingdom right away, as I'm in great danger." The young man asked the reason, troubled and blind, and he answered, "The king has found out that I know more than him, and the superior does not tolerate anyone who surpasses him in anything. The gardener's dog, Act 1, Phoenix V, the donkey, and the goddesses, so to whom is money delivered that receives, badly those who deliver it." Old Tello. You're right, and I want to thank you for it. I read in a little book that once upon a time they transported a goddess on a donkey, which those who saw her pass worshipped with due respect by kneeling down, marveling at the high wonders as donkeys that these were for them, and the donkey stopped. Seeing this, the owner got angry at the proud thought and hit him hard, saying furiously, "Not you, but the goddess." This is also true, so asking for forgiveness first in comparing yourself. The honors of the king are not for you, Tello, but for the money. The Tellos of Meneses, first part, Act 3. Sinai illustrations the dog, and the donkey Aesop tells of a man in a certain land who had a little dog for his amusement. This one, upon entering each day into his house, if he was late, she would flatter and frolic. Here is the translation, preserving the name pedal, for which reason the Lord, with the most secure grip, presented it to the table. Leading a donkey from his stable, as it solemnized him, it always provided him sustenance with ass-like audacity. One morning Hisati, in 2 feet, stood up and placed on his chest all hands full of mud, and they still say that he kissed it. Immediately the Lord ordered many lashes to be given instead of the gifts that were planned for his feed. The most dashing Portuguese acts in the bells on the cat 24. The mice came together to rid themselves of the cat, and after a long time of debates and opinions, they decided that putting a bell on the cat would be the best solution. A rat with a bushy tail, long legs, and quivering ears spoke to the Roman Senate. Who among us will dare to put this bell on the cat? The slave to her lover, Act 1, Scene X, lost in Dautun 5, once upon a time. A dog was crossing another river like the Douro, with a piece of lamb in its teeth. The shadow, not small, within the waters it saw, and to catch it, it let go of what it had in its mouth. It went to grasp it, and in an instant the dog realized its folly. It returned to its meat and found that the river had taken it. The miracle out of jealousy, journey third the arrogant, and the humble a small sapling grew in a garden, and it begged the one closest to it, which was its death and knife, to let it grow. The arrogant oak, proud from its branches, would not let the sun touch it. Little sapling, it said, be content with living where you can serve me. But eventually the day came when the village tried to expand the green land, and the audacious oak, cutting through the sky, fell to the ground. The little sapling, now owner of the sun, said, these ups and downs give fortune to the tall. I want to be small-bought. The suspicious one, Act Sunund, the arrogant broken Aesop writes that the strong oak made fun of the weak reed. He warns what happened to both. One day a wind came, and the arrogant oak, strong, resisted so much that it broke from its native foundation. But the humiliated reed let it pass above, and it passed without offending it in any way. And thus, with the war over, the reed stood tall as before, and the oak left its proud branches on the ground. The village knights, Act 3rd, be satisfied with one's position. Pastors here tell a story of a mountain, I assume. It was one of the larger ones, complaining to Jupiter. Great Lord, everything you create changes. If I stand firm, it's because I have little value. Those who are high fall so low that they scare, and those who are down rise up. Someone was poor yesterday but is now extremely rich, while another falls into great poverty. Here is the translation of the text. Preserving the name Pidal, that once had enormous power. How am I not the being I was born as? But he answered, O foolish one, you are deceived. Let everything change, for you can live steadfast. He who could not climb also could not descend. From the lion's son, Act 2, seen Xi teeth, and man J. Piter Jupiter, to whom the teeth of man complained one day, recounting their labor from the first tooth that ground food, and how they were cast out in pain after just a day. Jupiter scolded him, and he replied, what am I to do if they cause no stop? To him who later retorted, man, endure, it is your lot, as you can bear it well. Later you will be glad to see your tooth in your mouth. From Die Hard, Act 3, seeing Xie learning from another's head one day, a fox, an ass, and a lion went hunting, and put the fox on a meadow to divide the hunt. The lion told the ass, divide that catch. The fool made 3 parts of the booty. He gave his share to the hungry lion, seeing that the lion was giving him an equal part. He seized it cruelly because he was equaling himself with it. Then he looked at the fox and said, divide this prey. The fox took the smallest piece she found and gave the rest to the lion, who told her, how have you so skillfully divided my share, since you give me so much?" She replied, "My eye-cunning and prudent nature taught me that I must submit my humble self to your greatness, for which reason I laugh at donkeys who equal their thoughts to the haughty lions." From works O Lovers, Act 3, The Wolf and the Lamb. A humble lamb was drinking from a stream in the shallow current, while high above a voracious wolf lurked. And as he wanted to kill the innocent little lamb, he said, "Look how you stir up the water, drink so roughly." The lamb answered, "Wolf friend, you want to fight. I am low, and you are high. You disturb me. You offend me. What do my relations have to do with you who are high above, if not that you seek a quarrel from the disliked beauty?" Act 2, Scene by illustration, the woman cat. O heavens! Let it not be like that man from Athens, who asked Venus to make a woman of him, with supplications and offerings, a white and black domestic cat. One day, while she was on her days, dressed in a bun and silk pyjamas, she saw pass by one of these creatures, like poets who nibble on papers, and with one light leap from the platform to the mouse, she showed that nature will always be what it is. The cat will be a cat, the dog a dog. From the Unavenged Punishment, Act 3 here is the translation. While preserving the name Pidal Gold, and silver turned her into a woman. Jupiter came to do this, and while the man was married, and she sat on her days watching, singing, and playing, they say a mouse passed by, and as soon as she saw it, she ran after it and gave it a cruel nail, gnawing, and at first touch she turned back. The Perfect Prince, first part, Act 2, impulsive. The woman cat fables tell of a cat who so loved a rich man that she asked Juno for to transform her into a woman, and I apply this to her. The goddess, to avoid ingratitude, changed her black feline snout into a human face, her furry skin into a desired body, and their wedding was celebrated. But one day, while on the days, she saw some mice pass by, and as before, she threw herself after them, the one who had previously treated such liberties. Example of married women. Act 2, The Ass and the Pig Loved by the Fire. Last night I read from a little book, I think it was Aesop's Fables, about an ass who saw a pig always lounging in the pigsty, out of envy. Said, "Let him fatten, and I will work. Let the boy eat bread, and the master sometimes give melon rinds and other treats, and me with water and wood." But on St. Luke's day they caught the pig and put a knife to its neck. When the ass heard the cries, he said, "Brother pig, if the master fattened me for that, it's the same to work. My name is Ass." With his bread he should eat. Act 1, Gratitude. A fierce lion plows through a hard thorn, shows the slave, and inclines to heal him. The inhumane one becomes humble before the wise one. Later, he appears in the Roman amphitheater walking to his death, paying for the pious medicine with a foot that once cured his hand. If a lion humors such ferocity, who is there to repay with evil treatment someone who deserves kindness, honor, and nobility? Being a portrait of friendship's lion, nature might be cruel one day when she forms an ungrateful man. Love without knowing whom. Act 2, Scene IA. Illustration, Balthasar of the Alcizar-Seville, 1530-1606. Disappointment Mercury wanted to know, judging himself without a rival, the estimation his deity had in the world. He found it necessary to find out about this fact by going directly to the workshop of an imaginary painter. So, having summarized his plans, he immediately set off on his journey, changing his divine attire to avoid recognition, not realizing how easy it is to uncover the sharp thorn that hurts a chicken's feet when digging. He saw many shelves filled with artificial boards, all of them gods and goddesses of questionable beauty. He also found his own among them, who in his opinion insulted the others with the advantage the sun gives to the stars. The god was present at every turn, talking to the discreet craftsman as follows. This here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Pidal, main table of Jupiter. What's its worth? That one usually sells for half a real. And the one of Goddess Juno, how does it go? Since it's from a woman, it usually sells for 1 real. What about the famous god Mercury? Any special price. It's given away for free. Whoever buys these 2 others gets it for free. He savoured this truth, but judged without passion that oneself, estimation rarely adds value, and those who are most praised only have their worth bestowed upon them by others. Illustration, John Ruiz, parson of Hita, from the Book of Good Love, written in 1330. The wall of Guadalajara and the wall of Monferrado on a Monday morning. The wall of Guadalajara set out for Monferrado, heading to market. He received a guest with a full beard in his home, inviting him to dinner and offering him a favour bean. The table was simple but kind, with limited provisions that expressed goodwill towards the poor. It reflected the good-natured character of the wall of Guadalajara. After dinner, as the feast ended, the host from the village invited the wall of Monferrado to visit his market the next day, and since he accepted, he became his guest. They went to his home, where he served much cheese, bacon, lard that was not overly salty, bread without ration or weight. This made the villager feel well provided for. With fine linen tablecloths, a white bag well filled with flour, the wall of Guadalajara settled in comfortably. He was honored and received great service, joy, and a good face, all of which contributed to his comfort. There was rich fare on the table, a variety of delicious treats and other kind gestures. The guest requested some relaxation during dinner, for all homes are softened by good eating. They ate and relaxed in the midst of their meal, when suddenly the palace door began to ring. His lady opened it, and she wanted to enter. The walls, filled with fear, fled as they could. The wall of Guadalajara entered his hiding place. The guest was sent here and there, without a secure place to stand. He found himself in the dark against the wall. Once the door was closed and fear passed, the villager was afraid and trembling. The other comforted him, saying, "My friend, Lord, be joyful and eat what you like best. This treat is sweet, it tastes like honey." The villager replied, "Come closer to it. He who fears death finds the honey faithful. Only you find it sweet, only you eat it. A man in fear cannot enjoy anything sweet. His fearful sight lacks clear will. With fear of death, honey is not tasty. Everything tasted is bitter in a dangerous life. I would rather chew on a secure fava bean in peace than consume 1,000 treats hastily and without pleasure. Provisions prized with fear are sore. Everything turns to bitterness from mortal fear. Because I'm taking so long, here everything threatens to kill me from the fear I've had when fully enjoying it, as I was alone. Here is the translation of the text, preserving the name Dadal the cat arrived. It reached me and gave me a bad time. You have grand houses, but there's much company. You eat many delicacies. This deceives you. My poverty is good in a secure cabin where a man hardly treads, and the cat barely scratches. Peace and security make poverty good. Fear makes riches poor. They always have suspicion, and with fear, sadness, happy poverty is sure nobility. The fox and the crow one day. The vixen was out with hunger. She saw a black crow on a tree carrying a large piece of cheese in its beak. she greeted it with flattery. "Oh, so handsome a crow! You are a relative of the swan. In whiteness you have a beautiful gift, shining more than all birds. Your song is very sweetly sung. If you sang just once, I would pay for it 20 times as much. Better than the wren or papagayo, better than the blackbird or nightingale, or even a rooster. If you sing now, all the sorrow I've been carrying will leave me in an instant." The crow was careful that its crowing pleased everyone more than any other song. He believed his tongue and his much squawking brought joy to people more than any minstrel. He started to sing, but as his voice raised the cheese from his beak, a gullet came to eat it. The crow, with the damage, became sad. False honor and vainglory bring sorrow and sadness without causing harm. Many think that the vine grower guards the path, and it's the thorns in the hedge that do so. Illustrations index pages. The Provilatio naturalisms, 4 pieces, 4 natural children, parents and children, return 9 of the caramel, 10 and mellows, animals 11, the strays, sparrows, praises 60 and Tony, with praise, chip 30, true April 18, the free sound 30, lamb 20, share 20, half lamb 20, 3, wolf, and lamb 26, the man of the sober man, wolf 29, January, Junior, hard versus the spikes 39, Germany, Cambridge labor, and there's 30, sim paper, and the labor of 4, and then piece 30, but in the sober rose, and none in the piece of praise of pronounce paper, and mold, and the rector, wearing exam, mold, faving, and a true piece of they phrase, paper, and rag, father, Ragged Class 3 Manuela and Marble Children. The Dog and the Fox 54 Fay Licks M. Los High Speeds Cry Gusto Dan. The Soldiers Order Lamanda del Soldado. The Crooked One El Gangoso to learn a good trade apron beneficiara. The Bad Painter El Malpinter Generosity La Liberalidad. The Blind Man El Ciego Haggling Regate Tom Friends and the Bear Goes Why dos Amaze while preserving the nay. Well, translation. We'll also hear is the air is the transdiagonal piety. From Private Collections, 182, the Ass and the Goddess, 183, the Dog and the Ass, the Cavender, 125, the 186, the Losing Cat Dozen, the Downtrodden, the Prad and the Humble True Dog, the Conjure, 180, day Fallon, Pradinate with one's lot, 189, Teeth, and 9 to learn, Letter, 190, Experience, at 994, Wormwood, Pretty, 95, the Ass, and the Pig done 96, Trays, Bread, 90, As and Truz, and the Scattered Tearseeth, Losing the Cat and the Truth for down 7, and with Wolf, and Nathan, none, Balthasar del Alcazar, 197, Disillusionment by Arcipres de Hito, 198, The Wall of Monferrado, and The Wall of God, Alarajara, 200, The Fox, and The Crow, 202, Note this one, Campermer, wrote these fables from the age of 15 to 23. 2C, page 91. Sometimes fables on the same theme are included to enable comparisons. 3. The same theme on page 192 for arrangement of a story by Don Augustin Morito. 5. Thus was called for a long time the one by the edge of the largest pond in Rutero Park. 6. Written on the occasion of the inauguration of the new building intended for the Monte de Piedad and Savings Bank in Madrid in 1875. 7. See the same theme on page 181. 8. See the same theme on page 186. 9. See the same theme on page 138. 10. I include this fable as an example of a versification that was in vogue at the end of the 16th century and beginning of the 17th. When many rhythmic extravagances were experimented with. 11. See the same theme on page 187. 12. See pages 73 and 194. 13. See the same theme on page 185. 14. The same subject on pages 157, 171. 15. The topic of this tale is the same as that included by Cervantes in Don Quixote, Part I, Chapter I. Page 69, see page 80, 18, see pages 123 and 71, 19, page 135, 20, see pages 127 and Fitz, page 195, 23, 78, 3, see page 121, 25 and 5, see page 109, 26, see page 23. 27, see page 26, 28, see page 1 and 18, 20 to 9. I have placed these three fables together to show Lope de Vega's ease in dealing with multiple versions of the same theme without repetition in form. 30, see page 172. Page and 69, see page 80 to 18, see pages 123 and 71. 19, page 135. 20, see pages 127 and Fitz, page 195. 23, 78, 3, see page 121, 25 and 5, see page 109. 26, see page 23. 27, see page 26, 28, see page 1 and 18, 20 to 9. I have placed these three fables together to show Lope de Vega's ease in dealing with multiple versions of the same theme without repetition in form. 30, see page 172.